but I probably would have agreed with his reasoning. Emotional pain was just another kind of training. At the guild, I went straight into the forging room and attempted my first hero-grade weapon. The materials were rare and expensive, but my privileges covered the cost easily. I locked myself in for 22 straight hours. When I finally emerged, I had created a hero-grade sword refined 6 times. It was a single-handed blade with serrated teeth running along one edge, almost like a shark-tooth sword. The lightning attribute gave it a distinctive color scheme. I named it Thunder Fong because the jagged edge looked exactly like a row of teeth. The effects were incredible. For anyone below level 50, it amplified lightning damage by 50%. On top of that, every strike carried bleeding and paralysis effects. 6 refinements was not a huge number for hero grade, but the enchantment properties were exceptional. A 50% damage boost was far above what most hero-grade weapons could offer. I spent additional time crafting a proper sheath for it. When I walked out carrying Thunder Fong, Sophia was waiting in the lobby. She had apparently sat there the entire time. The moment she saw me, she jumped up and asked how it went. I did not answer with words. I just drew the blade. The violent pulse of magic energy radiating from Thunder Fong told her everything she needed to know. Her eyes went wide with excitement. She asked what it was called. I told her the name and sheathed it again. Over the following days, I went to the Colosseum almost every day. By the 8th day, I had racked up 7 consecutive victories. My winning streak, combined with my appearance, had gotten me promoted to the main arena. They were seating audiences specifically to watch my fights now. The Colosseum had turned me into one of their star attractions, filling the stands with fans who came just for me. Sophia accompanied me every single day. She was always there before my fights, always waiting after. Her persistence was impressive, even if I knew exactly what she was doing. During this stretch, my stats exploded again. Strength gained 17, Agility 13, Constitution 16, Spirit 11. My current stats read: Strength 119, Agility 93, Constitution 116, Spirit 100. I had broken the 100 mark on 2 attributes and was approaching it on the others. My sword technique finally reached level 3 as well, Proficient Mastery. Both my hammer and sword skills were now at the same tier. At this point, my physical capabilities were comparable to a humanoid magical beast. Actually, my raw stats exceeded most beasts at my level by a significant margin. My body was growing faster than my magic power could keep up with, which was a strange problem to have. But even with that imbalance, if I fought Quinn right now, I was not sure he could beat me. That thought was both exciting and sobering. Quinn was my teacher, and yet the gap between us was shrinking at an alarming rate. Today was my 8th visit to the Colosseum. Because I was a first-year newcomer trying to complete the 10-win streak for a rank promotion, the rules dictated that each successive opponent had to be stronger than the last. My first fight had been a second-tier boar that I killed in one swing. The difficulty had been increasing steadily since then. Fights 5, 6, and 7 had actually required me to work for the win. Nothing dangerous yet, but the beasts were getting tougher and smarter. Fights 8, 9, and 10 would be the real tests. The beasts at this stage would be matched closer to my actual combat ability. The Colosseum system was designed to push challengers to their absolute limit by the final fight. The 10-win streak was not meant to be easy. Plenty of talented fighters had failed at fight 9 or 10 and had to start over. I was not worried though. My stats were climbing every single day. By fight 10, I would be measurably stronger than I was today. Time was on my side in a way it was not for anyone else. Every delay between matches meant more attribute points, more refined technique, more control over my lightning body enhancement. The longer the Colosseum took to schedule my fights, the worse it would be for whatever beast they put in front of me. I gripped Thunder Fong's handle and walked toward the main arena entrance. The crowd noise was already building inside. Somewhere beyond those gates, my 8th opponent was waiting. Time to add another win to the streak. The manager briefed me on the rules. Since I had 7 straight wins, my 8th fight would feature 2 third-tier magical beasts instead of 1. The difficulty was ramping up. I headed to the rest area and looked through the glass at the main arena. It was packed. While waiting, I watched the fighter before me, a second-year student with what looked like an A-rank elemental control talent. He was a water element warrior facing 2 wolf-type beasts for his 4th win. He immediately created a water armor around his body, which was the standard move for element controllers. It boosted defense significantly, but burned through magic power fast. I always thought that technique was decent but wasteful for low-level fighters. The two wolves attacked with real coordination. One would engage while the other struck from behind. The element warrior managed to stab one wolf through the eye, but ultimately the pressure of fighting two opponents overwhelmed him. The referee had to pull him out. Watching this, I took mental notes. Two opponents meant double the attack frequency, and the moment you dealt with one, the other would strike. On top of that, these wolves were higher level than their challengers. Another fighter went up after him. He faced four beasts, lost without surprise. Then it was my turn. The crowd erupted the moment I stepped onto the main stage. I had apparently built a real following here. Part of it was my appearance. Charm at 83 did its work, but mostly it was my fighting style. Every previous opponent had been cut clean in half with a single strike. People came to see that raw, overwhelming dominance. My opponents were two magic wolves. I drew Thunder Fong. The instant the blade cleared the sheath, my whole presence shifted. The air around me turned dangerous, but the wolves were too starved to care about instincts. They charged me, wanting nothing but to tear me apart. I stood completely still. It probably looked like I was frozen with fear. But the moment the first wolf reached me, I swung Thunder Fong horizontally. The blade tore through flesh and bone effortlessly. The wolf was split in two mid-charge, dead instantly. The second wolf lunged at the same moment. Its claws were inches from my body, but my left hand was faster. I grabbed its head. Just a slight squeeze and my fingers sank into the flesh and muscle of its skull through sheer force. I yelled and ripped its head clean off its body. Blood sprayed everywhere. I tossed the severed wolf head aside like garbage and walked toward the exit without looking back. The arena went completely silent for several seconds. Then the crowd lost their minds. They started chanting for another fight. What they had just witnessed was beyond anything normal. I had killed one wolf with my sword and torn the other's head off with my bare hand. A beast that was 10 levels above me. No weapon, no technique, just raw strength. The manager came rushing over, asking what happened. The referee told him everything. When he heard that I had ripped a wolf's skull off barehanded, his eyes went wide. He could barely process the information. Back in the rest area, I checked the calendar. 14 days until the newcomer combat tournament. At my current pace, I would complete the 10-win streak before then and upgrade my rank to Earl. Everything was on schedule. On the other side of things, Sacreheart had also decided to enter the newcomer tournament. To her, it was the fastest way to get her hands on me in a legitimate setting. She was apparently thrilled that in just 14 days, she would have an official excuse to fight me. She was still burning for revenge. Meanwhile, the shadow agent reported to the Pope about my day. The Pope listened and then asked a question that surprised even the shadow. Had I taken a single day off since arriving? The shadow agent told the Pope that I had not taken a single day off since arriving. He said that whenever I had even a minute with nothing to do, I seemed to fall into a state of anxiety. He believed it was connected to my past. The Pope had apparently conducted a full investigation into my background and discovered everything about my childhood. He felt sympathy, but recognized that those painful experiences had forged my willpower. His real concern was whether my mind had become twisted, whether my disciplined, well-behaved exterior was just a mask hiding something darker underneath. He thought it was very possible. What kind of teenager was this relentlessly driven without some psychological damage fueling it? He was considering arranging counseling for me. After all, a future pope could not be someone with a broken mind. What he did not know was that I had already been healing. Meeting Wisha on my journey to the church, finding Quinn and the others after I arrived, and having Milia in my daily life. All of these people had quietly mended the wounds inside me. I was not as damaged as he feared. That night, I heard a notification I had not gotten in a long time. One lifespan point added. That was the first time in ages. It was past midnight, but I had no intention of sleeping. After my spirit and constitution both crossed 100 points, my recovery speed and energy levels had become inhuman. I only needed 2 or 3 hours of sleep to feel completely refreshed. But I did not want to burn myself out, so I decided to give myself 1 day each week with 6 full hours of sleep. Those extra few hours were more than enough for a body like mine. The next morning, the Colosseum sent someone to my door. For once, I was up before Milia and answered the door myself. The worker told me my fight schedule had changed. I would be the final match of the day, the headline act. He also handed me my rewards for the 8th consecutive win. 8,000 points plus a red heart stone. The red heart stone could slightly improve physical constitution if worn regularly. The effect was too small to matter for me, so I decided to give it away. To Sophia, who had been hanging around me constantly. Absolutely not. I already knew exactly who I wanted to have it. I strung the stone into a necklace. It was beautiful, vivid color, crystal clear texture, perfect as a gift. I hung it on the kitchen wall where Milia would see it the moment she walked in. Then I went back to training. Basic daily practice was non-negotiable. Milia woke up shortly after. I checked the sky. It was around 4:30 in the morning, sun not even up yet. She stayed up past midnight every night preparing my late meals, and knowing her personality, she spent her days doing housework and cooking without a single lazy moment. She was probably working harder than I was. I made a mental note to give her more rest time going forward. Servants had no rights in this world, but I refused to treat the people around me like slaves. She stumbled out of her room, washed up, and headed straight to the kitchen. She pushed the door open and I watched from across the room. She paused for a second when she saw the necklace hanging on the wall. Then she seemed to think about it, concluded it must belong to me, decided it was not her business, and went straight to work without touching it. I kept training while monitoring the kitchen. Did she seriously not realize the necklace was for her? Maybe she just had not looked closely enough. She would figure it out eventually. An hour passed. I finished training and walked into the kitchen. Milia was happily preparing food, humming a little tune. She had not noticed me standing behind her. I made some noise to get her attention. She spun around, saw me, and immediately said breakfast was ready and she would bring it out. I looked past her at the necklace still hanging untouched on the wall. She cooked facing that direction. She would have seen it every time she looked up. Had she noticed it and just assumed it was not meant for her? I asked her directly. Had she seen the necklace? Milia stared at me, confused. She asked if I was the one who put the necklace there. I told her I bought it yesterday, but it did not suit me, so I was giving it to her. She froze completely. She repeated my words back to me like she could not believe them. When I confirmed it, tears started rolling down her face before she could stop them. I was caught off guard. I could tell she was overwhelmed, but I still asked if she did not like the gift. She shook her head quickly and said nobody had ever been this kind to her before. I walked over and patted her head. I told her not to cry over good things. She wiped her eyes and nodded. I told her I was hungry and asked if breakfast was ready. She snapped back into action immediately, setting everything out on the table. While I ate, she kept glancing at the necklace and smiling to herself. She prepared snacks for me too. Dried monster meat she had fried herself, some fruit juice. All homemade. She clearly treasured the necklace not because of its value, but because it came from me. I adjusted my plans for the day. Since I was scheduled as the final act at the Coliseum tonight, I had time in the morning. If I trained first, there would not be enough time for a full forging session afterward. But training all day would drain too much magic power before a fight. So forging first made more sense. I headed to the guild. What I did not know was that Rien had been stalking me. He had been tracking my daily routine for days and knew exactly which roads I took and when. He was waiting on my usual path that afternoon, expecting me to pass by. His plan was simple. By now I should have finished the drug pills he gave me. With several days since the last dose, the mild addiction should have me at my most uncomfortable. He planned to show up, compliment my recent achievements, and offer more pills. I would be desperate enough to take them. But luck was on my side. Because I went to the forge first and changed my schedule, I never walked past his ambush point. He waited and waited. I never appeared. He started getting suspicious. Maybe I had taken a different route. Maybe someone had warned me. His mind immediately went to York, who had recently submitted a resignation letter. Rien had not approved it yet, even though York had already left the guild. If anyone had betrayed the Alchemist Guild and tipped me off, York was the most likely suspect. Rien eventually figured out that I was headlining at the Coliseum tonight, which explained why my routine had shifted. He rushed over to the arena and decided to wait there instead. His new plan was to catch me after my fight, praise my performance, and hand over fresh pills. He hid in the VIP lounge to avoid making the encounter look too obvious. I finished forging in the afternoon. Since it was just practice, I made magic-grade weapons with no more than 6 refinements each. My efficiency had improved again. I left the finished pieces at the guild for sale and headed to the Colosseum. In my private restroom, I trained while waiting. Not a single second wasted. Occasionally, I glanced at other fighters competing on the main stage, but none of them impressed me much. Training time always flew by. A staff member appeared. 30 minutes until my fight. I wiped off my sweat, sat down cross-legged, and began regulating my breathing. When the time came, I walked out onto the main stage. The crowd exploded. My name echoed through the arena from every direction. People were screaming for me to tear my opponents apart. Even Rien, watching from the VIP section, was startled by the intensity. He knew I was famous, but this was his first time witnessing my popularity in person. Then my opponents emerged. For Magic Wolves, each at level 29, 10 levels above me. 4 of them at once. I narrowed my eyes. Just as I expected, the 9th round had doubled the difficulty from the 8th. For coordinated predators, all stronger than me on paper. But honestly, even facing 4 wolves above my level, I felt completely relaxed. My stats were so far beyond what my level suggested that these creatures were not the threat the Colosseum thought they were. The real question on my mind was what the 10th fight would look like. The final challenge for the 10-win streak. I had a feeling it would not be straightforward. Every round so far had escalated predictably. The 10th would probably break that pattern somehow. But that was tomorrow's problem. Right now, 4 wolves were snarling at me from across the arena, and thousands of people were watching. The wolves fanned out, already coordinating. Wolf-type beasts were intelligent pack hunters. They would not charge blindly like the boar from my first fight. They would probe, surround, and strike from multiple angles simultaneously. Good. That was exactly the kind of pressure I needed before the newcomer tournament. Sacreheart would be there in 14 days, along with every other talented first-year student. Real combat experience against coordinated opponents was far more valuable than any amount of solo training. These wolves were doing me a favor by being smart. I drew Thunderfang. Lightning crackled along the serrated edge. The wolves hesitated for just a fraction of a second when they felt the energy radiating from the blade. Smart animals. They could sense danger. But hunger and arena conditioning overrode their survival instincts, and all 4 charged. I activated my lightning body enhancement on top of my passive layer. My attributes doubled from an already superhuman baseline. The world seemed to slow down slightly as my perception sharpened. 4 wolves, for trajectories, for sets of claws and teeth coming at me from different angles. I moved forward to meet them. Not backward, not sideways. Straight into the pack. The crowd noise faded into background static. All I could hear was my own heartbeat and the pounding of 8 wolf paws against the arena floor. This was what I had been training for. Not the forging, not the politics, not the careful games with Sophia and the Pope. This moment, blade in hand, enemies closing in, nothing between survival and death except my own strength and skill. Thunder Fong hummed in my grip. The first wolf lunged. I swung. The 4 wolves were locked behind gates on the other side of the arena. Through the gaps in the bars, I could see them drooling, already imagining tearing me apart. The referee confirmed I was ready and announced the start. The gates lifted. All 4 wolves charged at me simultaneously. I kept my expression serious, though not because I was worried. These wolves were so starved that they had abandoned any pack coordination. Their formation was chaotic and sloppy. I had already calculated exactly how to take each one down. The first wolf reached me in a blink. I drew Thunderfang, and a flash of purple light cut through the air. The moment the wolf opened its jaws wide, I thrust the blade straight into its mouth. The tip punched out through the back of its skull. I yanked the sword free, and the body collapsed. Wolves 2 and 3 came at me from opposite sides. I shifted my feet slightly, almost like a dance step, and dodged both attacks with an elegance that surprised even me. Then I brought Thunderfang down in a single slash and cut the second wolf clean in half at the waist. Its front and back legs kept twitching separately on the ground. The 4th wolf was still closing in. I did not wait. I threw Thunderfang like a javelin. The entire blade buried itself in the wolf's skull. Its supposedly tough bone crumbled like paper against the force of impact. That left 1 wolf standing. It froze, confused. 3 of its packmates had dropped in what felt like a single heartbeat, but I was already in front of it. I grabbed a fistful of fur and slammed it face first into the stone floor. The arena surface was reinforced with a magic circle specifically to prevent damage, which meant the impact on the wolf's body was devastating. It let out a pitiful whimper. I grabbed its head and twisted. The neck snapped. Then I ripped the head clean off with my bare hands, just like last time. The crowd had been waiting for exactly this moment. The stands erupted into absolute chaos. Screaming, cheering, people losing their minds. 4 higher-level wolves, and I had not taken a single scratch. I pulled Thunder Fong from the dead wolf's skull, wiped it, and walked toward the exit without looking back. What I did not know was that Rien had been watching every second from the VIP section. He had come to the Coliseum specifically to intercept me with more drugged pills. Seeing my fight in person clearly shook him. He had heard I was a strong fighter, but witnessing it firsthand was something else entirely. I could tell later from how he acted that my performance had genuinely frightened him. He hesitated. A voice in his head asked whether continuing his plan was wise. If it failed and I grew to full strength, the consequences for him would be catastrophic. But his arrogance won out quickly. He told himself that as long as the plan succeeded now, there would be no future to worry about. He appeared in the main hall just as I was leaving. I heard his voice behind me and turned around. I kept my face completely calm and greeted him with a smile. I told him what a coincidence it was to see him here. He gave some excuse about watching a juniors match and said he had caught my performance. Then he steered the conversation exactly where I expected. He asked about the pills he had given me last time. Were they helpful? Did I like the effects? This was the moment I had prepared for. I let my voice carry just a hint of eagerness. I told him the effects were excellent and asked if they were available for purchase somewhere. I made sure my tone sounded slightly desperate, like someone who had tasted something addictive and wanted more. It worked perfectly. I could see the satisfaction flash across his face. He believed I was hooked. The slight urgency in my voice confirmed everything he wanted to hear. He had originally planned to scan me with magic power to check my physical condition and verify the drug's effects. But after watching my fight, he abandoned that idea. He knew that fighters with combat instincts as sharp as mine could detect magical probing instantly. If I caught him scanning me, his entire scheme would be exposed. The risk was not worth it. So he took my act at face value. He pulled out 3 bottles of the same pills and offered them to me casually. He said they were extras that meant nothing to someone of his level. I might as well have them. I let excitement flood my face. I made my breathing heavier, my eyes wider. I thanked him profusely and told him that if he ever needed help with anything, he should come to me. I even held myself back from reaching for the bottles immediately, as if my manners were barely restraining my craving. He loved every second of it. His lips curled into a subtle smirk as he handed the bottles over. I could practically see the gears turning in his head. He was already thinking beyond the original plan. If I was this dependent on his pills, maybe he could use me for other things too. Stealing secrets from the blacksmith guild, perhaps. Feeding him insider information. A talented young addict under his control would be an incredibly useful tool. After thanking him again, I took 1 pill out right in front of him and put it in my mouth. It dissolved instantly and flowed into my body. Then I excused myself, saying I needed to go train immediately. I left quickly, as if I could not wait to feel the drug's effects during practice. The moment I got home, I started training. But not because the pill was driving me to. Yerk had already told me that 1 or 2 pills, even 5 or 6, would cause no harm whatsoever. In small quantities, they actually did help with cultivation. The danger was only in consuming entire bottles over time, which would build the addiction to an uncontrollable level. So the pill I swallowed was genuinely useful. I just had no intention of ever taking enough to become dependent. Rien thought he was slowly poisoning me. In reality, I was accepting free training supplements from a man who wanted me dead, using his own weapon against him in tiny, harmless doses. The irony was almost funny. The most powerful alchemist in the church was hand-delivering premium cultivation aids to the person he was trying to destroy, and that person was getting stronger from every single pill. Every bottle he gave me was money out of his pocket and power into my body. I finished my evening training session and checked my progress. The pill had indeed boosted my cultivation speed slightly. Combined with my daily attribute gains from the Thunder Summoning breakthrough, the effect was noticeable. My stats were climbing steadily. 9 wins down after today. 1 more victory, and my noble rank would rise to Earl. The newcomer tournament was less than 2 weeks away. Sacred Heart was out there somewhere, sharpening her claws and counting down the days until she could fight me in an official setting. Let her count. Let Rien plot. Let Sophia scheme. I had Thunder Fong on my hip, lightning in my veins, and a body that grew stronger every single day without fail. Whatever came next, I would face it the same way I faced those 4 wolves tonight. Head on. No hesitation. No mercy. I spent 3 hours digesting the pill's effects. When I checked my stats afterward, I was stunned. Just one pill had pushed me to level 30 and raised all 4 attributes by about 4 points each. Rien's skills as an alchemist were genuinely incredible. If you could ignore the addictive side effects, this drug was basically a miracle medicine for someone at my stage. No wonder he was confident his plan would work. I sealed the remaining pills away. Technically, I could safely take a few more, but there was no need right now. I also wanted to get my body checked at some point to make sure nothing was wrong. Rien had played it safe with the dosage, which actually worked in my favor. More importantly, I could not afford to raise my level any higher before tonight. The Colosseum matched opponents based on your current level. Every point mattered. I had also been holding off on using the training resources I bought earlier for the same reason. Save them until after the 10-win streak. The next morning, the Colosseum worker arrived early again. I opened the door myself. He handed me my 9th win rewards, 10,000 points and a rare or used for hero-grade weapon forging. Then he told me about tonight's final challenge. I would face 1 mutant beast 15 levels above me, plus 4 regular beasts 10 levels above me. All at once. That hit differently. I remembered the mutant goblin warrior I had fought before. Just a goblin, but after mutation, its power had been terrifying. A mutant beast of a higher species would be far worse. The exact threat depended on the degree of mutation, but this was clearly a massive step up from yesterday. At level 30, my opponents tonight would be 1 level 45 mutant and 4 level 40 beasts. Yesterday at 29, I had faced 4 level 39 wolves. 1 level difference, but the difficulty had skyrocketed. Still, I was not panicking. Thunder Fong was a hero-grade weapon. It could pierce through 4th-tier beast defenses easily, even 5th tier if needed. My real advantage was firepower, not durability. As long as I could hit them, they would go down. I adjusted my plans. No forging today. Instead of going to the guild, I stayed home and trained lightly. The goal was not to exhaust myself, but to get my body into peak condition for tonight. Low intensity, high focus, saving every drop of energy. News of my 9-win streak had spread everywhere. Shaga, Winnie, and Gato all wanted to come watch my 10th fight. But when they saw the ticket prices, they could not afford them. So they planned to wait outside the arena for results. Quinn and several others who were close to me also planned to attend. They had already secured seats in the stands. My enemies had heard the news too. Sacred Heart smashed her room apart again when she learned my rank was about to rise. Then she calmed herself down and came to watch. Her obsession with me had reached an absurd level. Rien was there as well. Every one of my enemies expected me to win. That was the strange thing about my reputation now. Even the people who hated me believed I was unbeatable. The earlier matches were unremarkable. Win some, lose some, nothing exciting. The crowd was half asleep watching contestants get rescued by referees one after another. When I finally arrived at the Colosseum, I ran into Shaga and her group outside. They had come to cheer me on despite not being able to get in. Without hesitating, I brought them inside with me. I told them that going forward, if they ever needed help, they should just ask. No need to be so timid around me. Of course, I could not help with anything truly unreasonable, but within normal bounds, I would always be there. All 3 of them lowered their heads shyly and mumbled agreement. This was their first time inside the Colosseum. The luxurious environment clearly overwhelmed them. They were afraid of doing anything wrong. The manager spotted me and rushed over with a warm greeting. He could not believe how quickly the kid who had beaten up the Saints had grown into the arena's biggest star. I told him these were my friends and that I was taking them to my private restroom. He glanced at Shaga and the others, instantly recognizing them as nervous newcomers, but did not object. The manager's eyes lit up with an idea. He pulled out 3 annual passes and gave them to Shaga and her group, saying they could come to the Colosseum anytime for free. The 3 of them looked at me, unsure whether to accept. I told them to just take it. The manager was trying to build a relationship with me, and since he had genuinely helped me before, I did not mind. His name was Eugene Kenneth, one of the Colosseum's directors. When Shagao realized that the friendly man who had just handed them free passes was actually a senior executive, She went quiet. All three of them became even more stiff around me. They were measuring the gap between us again. If I won tonight, I would become an earl. The difference in our social standings would be enormous. I brought them to my private restroom. It was spacious with a massive glass window overlooking the entire arena. They stood frozen like baby chicks, afraid to touch anything. I told them to relax and started preparing for my fight. Staff brought in fruit and refreshments, which only made the three of them more overwhelmed. Half an hour before my match, I drank a magic recovery potion and cleaned myself up. From inside the tunnel, I could already hear the crowd chanting my name. The feeling of being a star was honestly pretty enjoyable. When I stepped onto the arena floor, the audience went wild. But I kept my eyes fixed on the opposite side. 5 massive wolves waited behind the gates. 4 of them were giant gray wolves, over 4 meters long, solid gray fur, powerful by normal beast standards. The bigger the body, the stronger the beast, and these things earned the word giant in their name. But the 5th wolf was something else entirely. Over 5.5 meters long, covered in gray fur streaked with black-red stripes, and glowing crimson eyes. I recognized the species immediately. A hell demon wolf, a mutant evolution of the giant gray wolf. Beyond having superior strength and speed compared to its base species, the hell demon wolf excelled at magical attacks. It could launch fireballs with strong corrosive properties, and its massive body meant an enormous magic power reserve. This was a seriously dangerous creature. My expression hardened. This fight required absolute focus. The referee announced the start. The gates opened. But unlike previous opponents, these wolves did not mindlessly charge at me. They formed up around the hell demon wolf and advanced at a steady, controlled pace. The leader was directing them. This pack would attack with coordination and strategy. That changed things. I could not wait for them to set up their formation. I had to strike first. I adjusted my stance and charged straight at them. Shaga covered her eyes from the viewing room. The size difference alone looked hopeless. 5 enormous wolves against 1 human. As I closed the distance, the hell demon wolf opened its jaws and formed a black fireball. It launched it directly at me. I did not dodge. Instead, I swung Thunder Fong to test the fireball's power. My timing was precise. The blade met the fireball at the exact moment of impact and split it cleanly in half. The 2 halves blazed past me on either side, so close I could feel the searing heat against my skin. Where the black flames touched the stone floor, they kept burning for several seconds before fading. Parts of my outer clothing were scorched away. After feeling that heat up close, I made my assessment. Those black fireballs were no joke. The corrosive flames could cause serious damage even through indirect contact. Going forward, I needed to dodge them entirely rather than trying to cut through them. Testing was done. Now the real fight would begin. I charged forward. The hell demon wolf watched me cut through its fireball and seemed surprised that a human could actually handle its attack. But it immediately escalated. Black light began radiating from its body, and a magic circle appeared above its head. It was casting something far more powerful. Fire rain. I recognized the danger instantly. If that spell completed, I would be fighting under a barrage of corrosive fireballs falling from the sky. I needed to end this before that happened. Taking damage was completely unacceptable to me. I activated my lightning body enhancement, and my speed exploded. I became a bolt of lightning crossing the arena in a flash. The 4 giant gray wolves rushed at me like they had lost their minds. Despite their enormous bodies, they were shockingly fast. That was the terrifying thing about this species. They had no fancy abilities, no elemental attacks, no special tricks, just claws and teeth. But the fact that they dominated other beasts with nothing but basic physical weapons proved that their raw stats were pushed to the absolute limit. Maximum speed, maximum strength, maximum defense. The simplest toolkit combined with the purest numbers. In a way, they were the same type of fighter as me. I swung Thunder Fong at the closest wolf and carved a massive chunk of flesh from its body. But unlike the smaller beasts I had fought before, this thing was too large to kill in one hit, and its pain tolerance was almost non-existent. Even with a wound deep enough to show bone, it did not flinch. It kept attacking with the same ferocity as before. These creatures barely felt pain at all, which made them relentless in combat. Normal beasts would never dare fight something this savage. The wounded wolf lunged at me with its jaws wide open. I used the same technique that had worked before. I thrust Thunder Fong straight into its mouth, through its throat, and out the other side. That should have been an instant kill. But this monster, even with a sword through its neck, managed to stagger away from me before finally collapsing several steps later. And Thunder Fong was stuck in its mouth, carried away with the body. I was now unarmed against 4 remaining giant predators. Winnie and the others watching from my rest room turned pale with fear. But I was about to show the entire arena what a true stat monster could do with nothing but bare hands. The second wolf charged and opened its massive jaws to bite me. I shot both hands forward and grabbed one tooth from the upper jaw and one from the lower jaw. Then I held its mouth open with raw strength. The wolf pushed with everything it had. Its jaw muscles strained and trembled. It could not close its mouth against my grip, not even by a centimeter. The other 2 wolves were closing in fast. I had seconds, so I did something that made the entire arena lose their collective minds. I swung the wolf I was holding by its teeth and hurled its entire 4-meter body through the air. It crashed directly into one of the incoming wolves, sending both tumbling across the stone floor. And the 2 teeth I had been gripping came out of the jaw completely, ripped free by the force of the throw. I looked at the teeth in my hands. Each one was roughly the size of a dagger, wickedly sharp and surprisingly sturdy. They would work perfectly as improvised weapons. The last standing wolf rushed me. I leaped onto its neck, mounted it, and drove both teeth straight down into its eyes. The wolf's world went red. It did not fear pain, but losing its vision was something else entirely. It went berserk, thrashing and biting at everything around it blindly. The other 2 wolves were nearby, just getting back on their feet. The blinded wolf sank its fangs into one of its own packmates, tearing a chunk from its neck. I had turned their own member into a weapon against them. The audience could barely process what they had just seen. Their brains were asking their eyes for confirmation. Did that human really just pick up a 4-meter wolf and throw it like a toy? Yes, that really happened. The crowd noise reached a deafening peak. The roar of thousands of voices actually affected the beasts inside the arena. The blinded wolf especially could not handle the sensory overload. It kept attacking everything around it in a panic, unable to distinguish friend from foe. The hell demon wolf watched all of this with cold, emotionless eyes. It showed no concern for the suffering of its subordinates. The fire rain spell was now complete. A massive magic circle appeared in the sky above the arena. Countless black fireballs began raining down from above. After casting the spell, the hell demon wolf visibly weakened. Its eyes dimmed and its posture sagged. This attack had cost it heavily in magic power. I watched the fire fall with a calm expression. Then I sprinted toward the 3 badly wounded wolves that were still alive. I reached the blinded one first and kicked its front leg. The bone snapped on impact. The wolf lost its balance and crashed to the ground. I grabbed its body and lifted it above me just as a black fireball struck it from above. The wolf's fur ignited instantly. Its body became a burning shield over my head. Another fireball hit the ground nearby and exploded on contact. With the giant wolf as cover, I absorbed the blast without taking direct damage. My living shield was being consumed at an alarming rate, but it held long enough. The other 2 wounded wolves tried to dodge the falling fireballs, but the barrage was too dense and too fast. Within seconds, both were torn apart by explosions and corrosive flames. Their bodies became unrecognizable masses of scorched flesh. The wolf above me was losing its life force rapidly. Fire was eating through its body at a terrifying speed. I needed my weapon back. I spotted Thunder Fong's handle protruding from the first wolf's corpse, which had also been badly burned by the fire rain. I dropped what remained of my shield and sprinted for it. The hell demon wolf watched me run with cold calculation. Even if I retrieved my weapon, so what? Fire rain had 3 full waves. I had survived the first one using its own wolves as shields. But with all 4 subordinates now dead or dying, I would have nothing to hide behind for waves 2 and 3. That was what it was thinking. It believed the math was still in its favor. 2 more waves of devastating fire against 1 human with no cover. Simple arithmetic. The beast was confident. But it had made one critical miscalculation. It was judging me by the standards of normal fighters at my level. It had watched me fight its wolves and categorized my abilities. Strong, fast, resourceful. Dangerous, but manageable at range with overwhelming magical firepower. What it did not understand was that my stats were not normal. My attributes did not belong to someone at level 30. They belonged to someone far, far beyond that threshold. And Thunder Fang was not a weapon that matched my level either. It was a hero-grade blade that could cut through defenses 2 full tiers above my rank. The Hell Demon Wolf had used its most powerful attack and exhausted most of its magic power in the process. It was weakened, drained, and standing on the opposite side of an arena from someone who could cross that distance in the time it took to blink. Someone who had just demonstrated the ability to throw a 4-meter wolf through the air with his bare hands. The math was not in its favor. It just did not know that yet. I ripped Thunder Fang from the charred wolf corpse. The handle was scorching hot, but only turned my palms slightly red. Nothing serious. I flicked the blade once and sent a current of lightning through it, cooling the metal back to normal temperature instantly. Then I locked my eyes on the Hell Demon Wolf. During the Fire Rain spell, the beast could not move or attack separately. That was its vulnerability. I charged straight at it while the second wave of fireballs began falling from the sky. These things had killed the giant gray wolves in a single wave, so their destructive power was no joke. Black fireballs rained down around me as I sprinted across the arena. Most of them I dodged with pure speed. The few I could not avoid, I cut in half with Thunder Fang as they fell. The distance between us was shrinking fast. The Hell Demon Wolf watched me punch through its fire barrage, and something shifted in its crimson eyes. It realized the fire rain was useless against me, so it stood up and canceled the remaining spell entirely, choosing to fight me head-on instead. Just because this creature leaned toward magic did not mean its close combat was weak. A bone-shaking roar erupted from its throat, and hellfire ignited across its entire body. It looked exactly like a demon crawling out of the underworld. The heat radiating from its burning fur was intense enough to warp the air around it. I did not hesitate. I closed the remaining distance and swung Thunder Fang at its face. The blade carved off a chunk of flesh from its jaw, exposing white bone and teeth underneath. The wound made the monster look even more terrifying than before. It barely registered the pain. Its massive claw lashed out at me with blinding speed, trailing black light through the air. I brought Thunder Fang up just in time. Claw met blade with a metallic crash that rang across the arena. Its claws were as hard as hero-grade weapons. On top of the physical attacks, the hellfire coating its body was constantly draining my stamina. The extreme heat sapped my energy with every second I stayed close. But I refused to back away. We fell into a brutal, primitive exchange of blows. No fancy footwork, no evasive maneuvers. Just two fighters standing toe-to-toe, meeting every attack with a direct counter. Block and strike. Block and strike. The audience was screaming non-stop at the sheer violence of it. Up in the VIP section, Sacreheart was watching with a deep frown. I could not see her face, but I knew she was there. My performance was making her uneasy. She could not understand how I had grown this much this fast. That confusion was feeding her anxiety about our upcoming fight at the newcomer tournament. Good. Let her worry. On the surface, the battle looked evenly matched. But anyone paying close attention would notice the truth. The Hell Demon Wolf's attacks were ferocious and relentless, yet none of them were landing clean hits on me. The only real damage I was taking came from the ambient heat of its hellfire, a slow area of effect burn that I could manage. Every single direct attack was blocked or deflected by Thunder Fang. Meanwhile, every one of my strikes was drawing blood. Each swing of my blade opened a new wound on the beast's body. Black blood was pooling on the stone floor beneath us, spreading wider with every exchange. My Thunderclap sword technique at level 3 gave me extraordinary control over my blade. Combined with my high spirit stat, I could read the wolf's attack patterns almost perfectly. I saw where every claw swipe was aimed before it arrived. Our raw stats were roughly comparable, but in terms of technique and combat awareness, I was crushing it completely. There were simply no weaknesses to exploit in my fighting style. High attributes across the board plus refined technique in both sword and body created something that had no obvious counter at this level. The Hell Demon Wolf was powerful, but it was a beast fighting on instinct. I was a human fighting with precision, calculation, and intent behind every movement. Because the wolf could barely feel pain, it did not notice what was happening to its own body. Blood loss was accumulating. Its movements were gradually slowing down. The attacks that had been blindingly fast at the start of our exchange were now just slightly sluggish. Most fighters would not have caught the difference. I caught it immediately. The moment its right claw lifted for another swipe, I spotted my opening. The joint was exposed for a fraction of a second. I drove Thunder Fong into the gap between the bones at the elbow and sliced clean through. The blade separated flesh and found the seam in the skeletal structure, splitting the entire foreleg in two. The Hell Demon Wolf's eyes widened with disbelief for one instant. Then its massive body tilted and crashed to the ground. It struggled desperately to stand back up, but a wave of dizziness from the catastrophic blood loss hit its brain. Its remaining legs scrambled against the stone, but could not find purchase. I struck immediately. Thunder Fong plunged into the side of its neck. Then I dragged the blade sideways, opening a gash that nearly severed the throat entirely. A torrent of black blood erupted from the wound, spraying across the arena floor in a dark fountain. I jumped backward instantly. Even dying, the beast's body was still attacking on pure instinct. Its remaining claws scraped at the air where I had been standing. Its burning crimson eyes stayed locked on me, filled with murderous hatred, as if it wanted to devour me even in death. I was not taking any chances. I stepped forward one final time and thrust Thunder Fong through its ear canal. The blade punched straight through its brain and emerged from the opposite ear. The Hell Demon Wolf finally went still. I pulled my sword free and looked toward the VIP section. The glass was opaque from the arena side, but I knew Sacreheart was watching. She knew that I knew. We stared at each other through the barrier, separated by glass and 12 days. At the newcomer tournament, she planned to make me pay. I planned to show her exactly how wide the gap between us had become. I left the arena. Behind me, the crowd refused to quiet down. They had just witnessed history. I was only the 9th person in the Coliseum's existence to achieve a 10-win streak as a first-year student. Every previous person who had accomplished this feat had possessed an S-rank talent and had been immediately granted marquee rank upon entering the academy. The Coliseum's rank advancement system only applied to those at Viscount level or below, meaning the maximum achievable rank through this path was Earl. Going higher required 50 consecutive wins, which was virtually impossible for anyone except the absolute strongest S-rank holders. Eugene was waiting in my restroom when I returned. He congratulated me and said that starting today, I should be addressed as Earl Clan. My results would be reported to the church administration, and my official Earl badge would be granted tomorrow. I nodded. Shaga, Winnie, and Gato were standing behind Eugene with expressions somewhere between awe and terror. They had watched everything through the glass window. The blood, the fire, the raw brutality of the fight. This was a side of me they had never seen before. But they were still here, still my friends, still waiting to congratulate me despite the growing distance between our worlds. I looked at them and felt something warm beneath the exhaustion. These connections mattered. Not because they made me stronger, but because they reminded me that strength without people to protect was just violence with no purpose. I had plenty of violence in me already. What I needed was more reasons to keep it pointed in the right direction. Tomorrow I would receive my Earl badge. In 12 days, Sacreheart would come for me at the tournament. And somewhere out there, Rien was still plotting, Sophia was still scheming, and the Pope was still watching from the shadows. The game was getting more complicated every day, but my path remained simple. Train, forge, fight, grow. Everything else would sort itself out as long as I kept moving forward. Eugene asked if I planned to keep fighting at the Coliseum. The battles were approaching life-or-death intensity, which actually made them excellent training. I told him I would come back roughly once every 10 days, but only after the newcomer combat tournament was over. He agreed immediately, clearly thrilled that his star attraction was not retiring. I left the Coliseum with Shaga and her group. They kept looking back at the building like they could not believe what they had just experienced. I understood the feeling. Their world and mine were separating rapidly. But before we parted ways, I had something for them. I pulled out 3 magic-grade weapons I had forged personally. A spear for Shaga, and weapons suited to Winnie and Gato. I told them these should significantly boost their combat power and that I wanted them to perform well at the upcoming tournament. Shaga tried to refuse, saying the gifts were too valuable. But her eyes never left the spear. The moment she held it, I could see the connection form instantly. The weight, the balance, the feel in her hands. It was like the weapon had been made specifically for her. Because it had been. I had crafted each one with their fighting styles in mind. I told them to just take the weapons and consider it an investment. They could repay me later. All three nodded earnestly. They were so honest and straightforward that I almost laughed. They seemed like the type who would be easy to trick. Fortunately for them, I was on their side. I reached over and patted Winnie on the head. I asked if she had been eating properly. She shook her head quickly and said she had been eating fine but had not been drinking blood, which was why she was not gaining weight. As a vampire, skipping blood consumption was not just a dietary choice. It would eventually shorten her lifespan. She knew this. I could tell she was struggling with it internally. After we parted ways that night, she apparently decided to start drinking blood again. She was finally ready to face that part of herself. Gato and Shaga went home to train. Everyone had their own battles to fight. Mine was at the forge. But this time I was not making weapons. I needed armor. The newcomer tournament was 12 days away, and I had been fighting in regular clothes this entire time. Against the Colosseum beasts, raw stats and Thunder Fong had been enough. Against talented human opponents who could think and adapt, proper protection would matter. I also started thinking about getting a mount. My official class was Knight, and over 100 chapters into my story, I still did not have one. That felt wrong. But my growth speed created a unique problem. If I raised a young beast as a mount, it would never keep up with how fast I was leveling. Unless I somehow got my hands on a dragon or something equally powerful at the top tier, any mount I chose now would just be a temporary solution. After thinking it over, I decided to find an adult magical beast first. Something already grown and combat-ready that I could ride while practicing mounted combat. Once I had enough money and status, I could look into getting a dragon. For now, practical was better than perfect. The next day, I went to receive my Earl badge. The ceremony went smoothly. The Pope himself conducted the ceremony. He stood before me, placed the badge on my chest, and congratulated me. He told me I would eventually get everything I wanted. I thanked him and meant it. My feelings toward the Pope were shifting. Every time we interacted, his sincerity seemed genuine. He really did act like an elder who wanted nothing more than to see a younger generation succeed. I could not tell if it was real or if he was simply the greatest actor I had ever met. Either way, the help he had given me was concrete and measurable. Better food, secret protection, opportunities to grow. If our paths ever diverged in the future, I would give him one chance before treating him as an enemy. He had earned at least that much. After the ceremony, I headed straight to the blacksmith guild. When the smiths there saw the Earl badge on my chest, the shock was visible on every face. Most of them had no idea I had been fighting at the Colosseum. They only knew me as a forging prodigy, not a combat monster. The badge forced them to reconsider everything they thought they knew about me. Dick happened to be at the guild that day. He stared at my Earl badge, then looked down at his own identical badge. His face twisted through several emotions in rapid succession. He could not accept that a teenager he had challenged to a 3-year bet was already standing at the same noble rank as him. He demanded to know how I had become an earl. I shrugged and told him it just sort of happened. Before he could explode further, I walked past him toward the forging room. Our 3-year agreement was looking increasingly one-sided. At this rate, I would not need 3 months, let alone 3 years, before I could handle him completely. I spent the next stretch of time crafting armor. Since I had never forged protective equipment before, I did not attempt hero grade. Instead, I built a complete magic-grade armor set with 10 refinements. The craftsmanship took everything I had learned and applied it to a completely different type of forging. Weapons were about concentrating force into a single edge or point. Armor was about distributing impact across surfaces while maintaining mobility. The finished suit was silver-white with intricate lightning patterns engraved across every plate. I designed it with a sleek, form-fitting profile rather than the bulky style most knights preferred. This made it look more elegant and allowed much greater freedom of movement during combat. Underneath the metal plates, I lined everything with high-quality soft beast hide so the armor would not chafe or restrict my skin. Comfort mattered during long fights. After the main chest piece, I forged a matching helmet, combat boots, bracers, and a reinforced belt. Each piece complemented the others in both function and appearance. I also purchased a necklace enchanted with lightning attribute amplification to round out the ensemble. The complete set gave me defensive capabilities I had never had before while maintaining the speed and agility that defined my fighting style. The lightning engravings were not just decorative either. They channeled my natural lightning energy throughout the armor, creating a subtle defensive field that would weaken incoming attacks before they even reached the metal surface.